The son who changed everything. Is that my son? Arthur Whitmore's question hung in the air like a thunderclap, silencing the murmur of conversation throughout the church. His piercing blue eyes, wide with shock, were fixed on the young boy standing beside his ex-wife in the doorway. The resemblance was unmistakable. The same blonde hair, the same jawline, even the same slight tilt of the head. Olivia Bennet tightened her grip on her son's shoulder, meeting Arthur's gaze across the crowded space. Yes, Arthur. This is Ethan, your son. 2 weeks earlier, Arthur sat in his corner office overlooking London's skyline, reviewing his wedding guest list with meticulous attention. Sir, I've compiled the final list as requested, his assistant said, placing a folder on his desk. Arthur flipped through the pages, his finger stopping at a conspicuous blank space. Add Olivia Bennet to the list. Your ex-wife? The assistant's eyebrows shot up before she quickly composed herself. Exactly. Arthur smiled coldly. Make sure she gets the premium invitation, the gold-embossed one. After his assistant left, Arthur swiveled his chair toward the window. 12 years had passed since the divorce. 12 years of building his empire, of transforming himself from the struggling architect Olivia had left into a real estate magnate worth over £300 million. Now engaged to Victoria Prescott, the beautiful art gallery owner who adorned magazine covers and moved in the right circles, Arthur had everything he'd ever wanted. Almost everything. She'll see what she walked away from, he murmured to the skyline. Across town, Olivia Bennet was grading papers in her modest flat when her son Ethan burst through the door. Mom, Coach says I made starting pitcher. The 12-year-old dropped his backpack on the floor, his blue eyes, so like his father's, shining with excitement. That's fantastic, sweetheart. Olivia embraced him, inhaling the scent of grass and sweat. How about pizza to celebrate? Later that evening, as Ethan did homework at the kitchen table, the mail arrived. Olivia sorted through bills and advertisements until she came to a thick, cream envelope with gold lettering. Her stomach tightened as she recognized the return address. What's that? Ethan asked, noticing her expression. Nothing important. She slipped it under a magazine. After Ethan went to bed, Olivia retrieved the envelope. Inside was an ornate invitation to Arthur Whitmore and Victoria Prescott's wedding. A handwritten note was tucked inside. I thought you might like to see what success looks like. J. Olivia's hands trembled as she returned the invitation to its envelope. She hadn't told Arthur about her pregnancy after their divorce. Their last conversation had been so bitter, his ambition so consuming, that she'd decided her child deserved better than a father who valued wealth over family. The next morning, Ethan found the invitation while searching for a permission slip. Mom, who's Arthur Whitmore? He asked, studying the elaborate card. Olivia froze. Where did you find that? On the counter. Ethan looked at her curiously. Wait, Whitmore. Isn't that your maiden name? After a long pause, Olivia sat beside her son. It's time we talked about your father. Over breakfast, Olivia explained how she and Arthur had met in college, married young, and divorced when his architectural ambitions began consuming him. She carefully omitted the worst parts, the arguments about money, his growing obsession with status, the emotional distance that had grown between them. Why didn't you tell him about me? Ethan asked, his voice small. I tried at first, Olivia admitted, but by then he'd moved across the country and changed his number. Then years passed, and it became harder to know how. The explanation sounded weak, even to her own ears. Ethan was quiet for a long time. I want to go, he finally said. To the wedding. Mom, I know it would be uncomfortable for everyone, but he's my father. Don't I have a right to meet him? The question hit Olivia like a physical blow. For years, she'd justified her decision as protecting Ethan. Now she wondered if she'd really been protecting herself. That evening, Olivia's phone rang with an unfamiliar number. "Professor Bennett, this is Victoria Prescott." Olivia nearly dropped the phone. "Victoria, how did you get my number? Don't you remember? You gave it to me years ago when I interviewed you for my sociology paper on single motherhood." Victoria's voice was sugar-sweet. "I was so touched by your story about raising your son alone after his father abandoned you, never knowing you were talking about my fiancé." Olivia's blood ran cold. "You know about Ethan?" "I've known for quite some time. Imagine my surprise when I realized who you were." Victoria paused. "James doesn't know, of course, not yet. I thought you deserved to hear it from me first. I'm looking forward to seeing you both at the wedding." After hanging up, Olivia stared at the golden invitation on her counter. What had been meant as Arthur's triumph was about to become something else entirely. What do you predict will happen when Arthur sees Ethan for the first entourage at the wedding rehearsal dinner? What's the most dramatic confrontation you've ever witnessed or experienced? And what were the immediate consequences? Share your stories below. The Plaza Hotel ballroom gleamed with opulent extravagance. Crystal chandeliers cast prismatic light over tables adorned with white orchids and gold-rimmed china. Arthur Whitmore stood near the entrance with Victoria, greeting guests arriving for their rehearsal dinner. "Darling, the Hendersons just arrived," Victoria whispered, nodding toward a couple entering the ballroom. Her diamond engagement ring caught the light as she touched Arthur's arm. Arthur smiled automatically. Everything was perfect. The venue, the guests, the beautiful woman at his side. This weekend would cement his place among London's elite. The dinner was deliberately scheduled before the ceremony to maximize press coverage. Victoria had insisted on it. "Arthur," a business associate approached, champagne in hand. "This is quite the spectacle. You've certainly come a long way from that small firm in Clapham." "Hard work pays off," Arthur replied, shaking the man's hand. He was about to elaborate when Victoria's grip on his arm tightened painfully. "Arthur," she said, her voice strained. "Look who's here." Arthur turned toward the entrance. The crowd seemed to part, revealing Olivia standing in a simple black dress. But it wasn't Olivia who made Arthur's heart stop. It was the boy beside her, 12 years old, with Arthur's blonde hair and blue eyes, wearing a suit that seemed slightly too large for his slender frame. "Is that my son?" The words escaped before Arthur could stop them. Conversations halted. Guests turned to stare. "Yes, Arthur. This is Ethan, your son." Arthur felt the room tilt. Victoria's fingernails dug deeper into his arm. "Excuse us," he managed, then strode across the room, pulling Olivia into a side alcove. Ethan followed, his eyes wide, but chin raised defiantly. "What kind of sick joke is this?" Arthur hissed once they were away from prying ears. "No joke," Olivia replied calmly. "Ethan wanted to meet his father. The invitation seemed like an opportunity. You can't just show up with some. I have his birth certificate in my purse," Olivia interrupted, "along with DNA test results. I anticipated your skepticism." Arthur stared at the boy, who stared back with unsettling directness. The resemblance was undeniable. He saw his own features reflected back at him, the shape of the eyes, the slight cleft in the chin. "You had my child and never told me?" Arthur's voice cracked. "You were very clear about your priorities when you left," Olivia replied, "and you weren't exactly easy to reach afterwards." Ethan stepped forward. "She tried to talk me out of coming. This was my idea." The boy's voice, on the edge of changing but still carrying childish notes, brought a rush of emotion Arthur wasn't prepared for. "You should go," Arthur said, struggling to maintain composure. "We received an invitation," Olivia replied. "We'll stay for dinner, then leave if that's what you want." Before Arthur could respond, Victoria appeared at his side, her practiced smile firmly in place. "Olivia, what a surprise." Victoria embraced her with theatrical warmth. And this must be Ethan. James never mentioned he had a son. That's because James didn't know, Olivia said, studying Victoria closely. Though I understand you did. Victoria's smile faltered briefly. Let's not create a scene. The caterers are serving dinner. Arthur watched in stunned silence as Victoria led Olivia and Ethan to their assigned table, strategically placed at the far corner of the room, while guests speculated in hushed whispers. Arthur mechanically took his seat at the head table, his appetite gone. You're making a spectacle of yourself, Victoria murmured, touching his hand. Pull yourself together. Did you know? Arthur demanded. About the boy? Victoria sipped her champagne before answering. I may have suspected. Olivia was my professor years ago. I interviewed her for a paper on single motherhood. You knew I had a son and said nothing? Arthur's voice rose slightly. Keep your voice down, Victoria hissed. What was I supposed to say? By the way, your ex-wife, who never contacted you, might have had your child? Besides, look at her, bringing him here just to disrupt our wedding. It's exactly the kind of dramatic stunt someone in her position would pull. Across the room, Arthur observed Ethan picking at his food while fielding curious glances from nearby guests. The boy sat straight-backed and dignified, despite his obvious discomfort. After dinner, Arthur found himself standing alone at the bar. Marcus, his best friend and business partner, approached. Quite the development, Marcus said, ordering a scotch. Kid looks exactly like you. She should have told me, Arthur muttered. Probably, Marcus agreed. But from what I remember about your divorce, you weren't exactly receptive to communication. That was 12 years ago. 12 years you missed with your son. Marcus handed Arthur a drink. The question is, what are you going to do now? Before Arthur could answer, he noticed Ethan heading toward the restrooms. Without thinking, he followed. In the marble-lined bathroom, Arthur found himself standing next to his son at the sinks. Their eyes met in the mirror. My mom says you design buildings, Ethan said, breaking the awkward silence. I used to, Arthur replied. Now I mostly buy and sell them. I like drawing buildings, Ethan said, drying his hands. Mom says I get that from you. Something shifted in Arthur's chest. Would you like to see some of my projects tomorrow? I could show you around the city. Surprise flashed across Ethan's face, followed by cautious excitement. I'd have to ask Mom. Of course, Arthur nodded. Ask her tonight. When Arthur returned to the ballroom, Victoria immediately cornered him. What did you say to the boy? His name is Ethan, Arthur replied. And he's my son. This changes nothing, Victoria insisted. The wedding is still happening on Saturday. Arthur looked past her to where Olivia was helping Ethan with his jacket, preparing to leave. The boy said something that made her smile, a genuine smile that Arthur hadn't seen in years. We'll talk about this tomorrow, he said to Victoria, already moving toward the exit. Arthur, Victoria called after him, but he pretended not to hear. Outside, he caught up with Olivia and Ethan as they waited for a taxi. I'd like to see him tomorrow, Arthur said without preamble, if that's all right with both of you. Olivia studied him carefully. That's up to Ethan. They both looked at the boy, who nodded with surprising authority. 10 o'clock, Arthur said, handing Olivia his card. I'll send a car. As their taxi pulled away, Arthur felt something he hadn't experienced in years. The unsettling sensation that his carefully constructed life was about to change completely. What difficult choices will Arthur have to make now between his past, present, and future? What's the biggest sacrifice you've ever seen someone make for their family? Share your thoughts below. You're canceling our cake tasting for him? Victoria paced James's penthouse living room, still wearing her silk robe from breakfast. We've had this appointment for months. Arthur straightened his tie in the mirror. I'll be back in time for the dinner with your parents. This is important, Victoria. More important than our wedding in 4 days. She positioned herself between Arthur and the door. You don't owe that woman anything. For all you know, the boy isn't even yours. He's mine." Arthur reached for his keys. "You can see it as clearly as everyone else." "Fine. Go play daddy for a day." Victoria's voice hardened. "But be back by 6, and this doesn't become a regular thing after we're married." Arthur paused at the door. "We'll discuss that later." The car Arthur sent arrived precisely at 10 a.m. outside Olivia's apartment building in Hampstead. Ethan bounded out the front door before the driver could announce their arrival, his mother following more cautiously. "Is that your building?" Ethan pointed to a gleaming skyscraper as they drove through the city. "That's the Whitmore Tower." Arthur nodded. "We can start there if you'd like." "Cool." Ethan pressed his face against the window. "Mom says you were an architect before." "I was." Arthur glanced at Olivia, who was looking resolutely out her window. "I designed my first building when I was 26, the year before we separated," Olivia added quietly. An uncomfortable silence filled the car until they reached their destination. Throughout the morning, Arthur showed Ethan around the building he'd designed, explaining the principles behind its construction. The boy absorbed everything, asking surprisingly insightful questions. When they reached Arthur's office on the top floor, Ethan ran to the floor-to-ceiling windows. "You can see forever from here." Arthur stood beside him. "That park down there is where I proposed to your mother." Ethan looked up sharply. "Really?" "It was raining," Olivia said, joining them at the window. "He didn't have an umbrella, so he used his architecture portfolio to keep us dry. Ruined all his drawings." "Worth it," Arthur said without thinking. Their eyes met briefly before Olivia looked away. After lunch, Arthur suggested a football match at Wembley Stadium. In the private box, Ethan devoured a hot dog while rattling off player statistics with impressive accuracy. "You like football?" Arthur asked. "He's obsessed," Olivia smiled. "He made starting striker this season." "No kidding, I used to play in school," Mom told me, Ethan said. "She has a picture of you in your kit." Arthur looked at Olivia, surprised. "You kept that?" "I kept some things," she admitted, for Ethan. During the halftime break, Olivia excused herself. Alone with his son, Arthur felt suddenly awkward. "Your mother's done a good job with you," he finally said. Ethan nodded, serious. "She works really hard. She's a professor now, but she used to take extra jobs when I was little." The simple statement landed like a blow. While Arthur had been amassing wealth, Olivia had been struggling to raise their child alone. "I'm sorry I wasn't there," Arthur said quietly. Ethan studied his father's face. "Why did you leave?" Before Arthur could answer, Olivia returned. The moment passed, but the question lingered in Arthur's mind for the rest of the afternoon. That evening, after dropping Olivia and Ethan at their apartment, Arthur arrived late to dinner with Victoria's parents. "Arthur was with his long-lost son today," Victoria announced as he took his seat. "Quite the pre-wedding surprise." "Son, what's this about?" Victoria's father lowered his menu. "My ex-wife attended the rehearsal dinner last night," Arthur explained, keeping his voice level. "With our 12-year-old son I didn't know existed." "How convenient," Victoria's mother remarked, "just before your wedding to our daughter." "Mother, please," Victoria interjected. "Arthur has assured me this won't affect our plans." Later that night, lying awake beside a sleeping Victoria, Arthur couldn't stop thinking about Ethan's question. Why did you leave? The answer didn't seem as clear as it once had. The next morning, Arthur canceled another wedding appointment to take Ethan to his new construction site in Southwark. Olivia accompanied them, but kept her distance, allowing father and son space to connect. "You could design buildings again," Ethan suggested, as Arthur showed him the blueprints. "Mom says you were really good." "Maybe someday," Arthur replied, surprised by how appealing the idea suddenly seemed. When Arthur returned to the penthouse that afternoon, Victoria was waiting, her expression stormy. "The florist called. You missed the final selection." "I had Marcus handle it." "Marcus doesn't know the difference between peonies and roses." Victoria threw her hands up. And your tailor called about your final fitting. I'll go tomorrow, Arthur promised, pouring himself a drink. No, you won't. Victoria slammed her hand on the counter. Because tomorrow you'll be with them again. I saw it on your calendar. Arthur set down his glass. His name is Ethan. And yes, I'm taking him to the Natural History Museum. He's interested in dinosaurs. He's interested in stealing you away from me. Victoria's voice rose. Can't you see what's happening? Olivia waited 12 years to spring this on you. Now suddenly she's back in your life with a convenient mini version of you, days before our wedding. That's not what's happening, Arthur defended. She didn't even want to come to the wedding. Ethan insisted. Of course she'd say that. Victoria scoffed. Wake up, Arthur. She's manipulating you. You're the one who knew about my son and said nothing, Arthur countered. Victoria's expression shifted. I need to know where your priorities lie. Is it with me, your future, or with them, your past? He's my son, Victoria, not my past. Then postpone the wedding, she challenged. Take time to figure this out, because I won't share you with them. Arthur stared at her, seeing for the first time the coldness behind her beauty. I need some air, he said, grabbing his keys. He ended up at a pub near Olivia's apartment, not intentionally, but drawn there nonetheless. After his second scotch, he called her. Can we talk alone? 30 minutes later, Olivia slid onto the bar stool beside him. Ethan's with my sister, she explained. Is everything okay? Victoria wants me to choose, Arthur said, between my wedding and my son. What are you going to do? Olivia asked quietly. Before Arthur could answer, the bartender approached with Olivia's wine. You two celebrating something? No, they answered simultaneously, then shared a small smile. Actually, yes, the bartender continued. I recognize you from the society pages. Big wedding this weekend, right? Congratulations. After he moved away, Olivia took a long sip of her wine. I should go. Please stay, Arthur said. Just a little longer. They talked about safe topics. Ethan's school, Olivia's teaching position, the neighborhood. It felt surprisingly comfortable, like stepping into a familiar room after years away. He has your smile, Arthur said suddenly. I noticed it today, when he was looking at the blueprints. And your eyes, Olivia added. And unfortunately, your stubborn streak. Arthur laughed, then grew serious. Thank you for bringing him to meet me. You could have kept him away. I considered it, Olivia admitted. But he deserves to know his father. As they parted on this pavement outside, Arthur impulsively took Olivia's hand. I'm sorry for how things ended between us. That was a long time ago, she said, gently withdrawing her hand. We were different people. Walking back to his car, Arthur's phone rang. It was Victoria. Where are you? She demanded. On my way home, he replied. You were with her, weren't you? Victoria's voice trembled with rage. After everything I've done for you, the connections, the social standing, you'd throw it all away for some professor and her brat? Arthur stopped walking. Don't ever speak about my son that way again. Your son? Victoria laughed bitterly. Do you know why Olivia really left you, Arthur? She was sleeping with someone else. Ask her about it. Arthur hung up, his mind racing. It couldn't be true. Yet doubt crept in, poisoning the fragile peace he'd felt moments before. What will Arthur do to uncover the truth behind Victoria's shocking accusation? How do you think this new doubt will impact his fragile reconciliation with Olivia? Share your predictions in the comments. Did you cheat on me? Arthur's question shattered the peaceful atmosphere of the Natural History Museum, where they stood watching Ethan examine a T-Rex skeleton. Olivia's face drained of color. What? Victoria said you were unfaithful. That's why our marriage ended. Arthur kept his voice low, aware of their son just yards away. Was she telling the truth? How dare you? Olivia's words came out as a whisper, her eyes flashing with hurt and anger. After everything, you'd believe that? I don't know what to believe anymore. Arthur ran a hand through his hair. 12 years ago you walked out. No explanation, just divorce papers. Is that how you remember it? Olivia stepped back. You stopped coming home, Arthur. You missed our anniversary for a client meeting. When I needed you after my father died, you were too busy closing a deal. I was building a future for us. You were building a future for yourself. Olivia glanced at Ethan, making sure he was still occupied. I never cheated. Victoria is lying to manipulate you. Arthur wanted to believe her, but doubt had taken root. Why would she lie about that specifically? Because she's losing control of you. Olivia's expression softened slightly. Look at him, Arthur. He's been waiting his whole life to meet you. Don't let Victoria poison this. Ethan turned and waved them over excitedly. The conversation halted as they joined their son, both parents forcing smiles. Throughout the afternoon, Arthur observed Olivia with Ethan. Her patience, her genuine interest in his enthusiasm, the easy affection between them. Nothing in their interaction suggested dishonesty. By the time they left the museum, Arthur's suspicions had begun to fade. Can we get ice cream? Ethan asked, as they emerged onto the busy pavement. We should probably head home. Olivia hesitated. Your father has wedding preparations. I have time, Arthur interrupted. There's a great place around the corner. Over ice cream, Ethan chatted about school and football, occasionally drawing Arthur into discussions about architecture. Watching them together, Olivia felt a complicated mixture of joy and regret. This was what might have been. The three of them. A family. When Arthur's phone buzzed for the fourth time, he finally checked it. Victoria, he explained, silencing it. The wedding planner needs decisions. You should go, Olivia said gently. We've taken enough of your time. Back at the penthouse, Arthur found Victoria surrounded by flower arrangements and seating charts. Nice of you to join us, she said coldly. We've been making decisions without you. Can we talk privately? Arthur nodded toward the wedding planner, who quickly excused herself. I asked Olivia about your accusation, he said once they were alone. She denied it. Victoria rolled her eyes. Of course she did. What else would she say? Why would you tell me something like that without proof? To open your eyes. Victoria threw a seating chart onto the table. You've spent every day with them since they appeared. Our wedding is in 2 days, and you're playing happy family with your ex. He's my son, Victoria. I'm trying to make up for lost time. Lost time orchestrated by her. Victoria stepped closer. She kept him from you for 12 years, and now you're defending her? I'm not defending anyone. Arthur sank onto the couch. I'm trying to figure out what's right. Victoria sat beside him, her voice softening. I know this is confusing, but we've built something special, Arthur. Don't throw it away over guilt. After the wedding, we can sort out a proper visitation schedule. The boy can be part of our lives in an appropriate way. That night, unable to sleep, Arthur called Marcus. I need perspective, Arthur said when his friend answered. About Victoria, about Olivia, about all of it. They met at Marcus's apartment, where Arthur poured out the whole complicated situation. I feel like I'm living someone else's life, he concluded. 3 days ago I was getting married. Now I'm questioning everything. Marcus refilled their glasses. Can I be brutally honest? Please. You've never looked at Victoria the way you looked at Olivia back in the day. Marcus leaned forward. Even at your engagement party, I noticed it. There's something missing. That's not fair. Victoria and I have a good relationship. A good business arrangement, maybe? Marcus shrugged. You get social status and a beautiful partner. She gets your money. And connections. But when was the last time you were truly happy with her? Arthur stared into his glass, unable to answer. And here's another question, Marcus continued. If you hadn't received that promotion 12 years ago, the one that started keeping you at the office until midnight, do you think you and Olivia would still be together? The question hit Arthur like a physical blow. The promotion had been his big break, the first step toward building his empire. But it had also been the beginning of the end for his marriage. I never got over her, Arthur admitted quietly. I told myself I had, but seeing her again, meeting our son, I've been lying to myself for years. So what are you going to do about it? Arthur didn't answer. He couldn't. Not yet. This is a critical moment for Arthur. What do you think he'll decide about his wedding and his future with Victoria? What's the biggest turning point in your life that made you question everything? Share your reflections below. The next morning, one day before the wedding, Arthur arrived at Olivia's apartment building unannounced. Her sister Rachel answered the door. "Olivia's at work," Rachel said coldly. "She has classes until noon." "Is Ethan here?" Rachel crossed her arms. "What do you want, Arthur? My sister was just starting to move on with her life before you sent that invitation. I need to talk to my son." After a long moment, Rachel stepped aside. "He's in his room, first door on the right. Don't upset him." Ethan was at his desk, sketching a building that looked remarkably like the Whitmore Tower. "That's pretty good," Arthur said from the doorway. Ethan looked up, surprised but pleased. "Mum says I have your eye for detail." Arthur sat on the edge of the bed. "Ethan, there's something I need to ask you. Did your mum ever say anything about why we divorced?" Ethan set down his pencil. "She said you wanted different things, that you loved your work more than anything." "That's not true," Arthur said automatically, then paused. "Or maybe it was back then. I thought success would make me happy. Make us happy." "Did it?" Ethan asked, his expression serious. "No," Arthur admitted, "it didn't." They talked for nearly an hour, about architecture, about Ethan's childhood, about Arthur's regrets. It was the most honest conversation Arthur had had in years. When Olivia returned from work, she found them sketching together at the kitchen table. The sight stopped her in her tracks. "Arthur, I didn't expect you today." "We're designing my dream house," Ethan explained, holding up their drawing. "Dad says I have real talent." "Dad?" The word hung in the air between them. "Can we talk, Olivia?" Arthur asked. "Alone?" In the small living room, Arthur paced while Olivia waited. "Victoria told Ethan you left me because I was unfaithful," Olivia said, before he could speak. "He came to me in tears last night." Arthur stopped pacing. "She did what?" "She called him while I was in the shower. Said she thought he should know the truth about why his father wasn't in his life." "I'm so sorry," Arthur said, genuinely horrified. "I had no idea." "What kind of person does that to a child?" Olivia's voice shook. "Is this really who you want to marry?" The question echoed in Arthur's mind as he drove back to the penthouse. By the time he arrived, his decision was made. Victoria was directing florists when he walked in. "There you are. The rehearsal starts in 3 hours. Your tux is laid out in the bedroom. We need to talk," Arthur said quietly. "After the rehearsal," Victoria replied, not looking up from her clipboard. "No, Victoria." Arthur's tone made her pause. "I can't marry you." Her clipboard clattered to the floor. "What did you say?" "I'm calling off the wedding." Victoria's face contorted with rage. "This is about them, isn't it? She's manipulated you completely." "This is about us," Arthur corrected her. "About who we really are and what you did to my son." Victoria's expression shifted instantly. "What are you talking about? You called Ethan. Told him his mother was unfaithful. He's 12 years old, Victoria." "I was trying to protect us," Victoria insisted, her voice rising. "That woman kept your child from you for 12 years, and now you're canceling our wedding for her." "Not for her," Arthur said firmly. "For me. For the man I want to be." Victoria grabbed a vase from the table and hurled it against the wall. "You'll regret this. My father will destroy your business connections. The prenup penalty alone will cost you millions." Arthur walked to the door, turning back one last time. "It's worth it. This is a truly monumental decision. What do you think the immediate aftermath of this canceled wedding will be for Arthur and his relationship with Olivia and Ethan? What's the bravest decision you've ever seen someone make? risking everything for what's right. Share your thoughts below. The Plaza Hotel erupted in chaos when Arthur announced the wedding's cancellation. Staff scrambled to inform guests, journalists hovered for statements, and Victoria's father threatened legal action in the hotel lobby. Through it all, Arthur felt an unexpected sense of calm. "So, you're sure about this?" Marcus asked, as they cleared Arthur's belongings from the hotel suite. "Never been more certain of anything," Arthur replied, tucking his cufflinks into his pocket, the ones Olivia had given him on their first anniversary. "Victoria's already talking to the press. It won't be pretty." "I don't care." Arthur paused, looking around the lavish room. "For 12 years, I've been chasing the wrong things." The fallout was swift and public. Victoria gave tearful interviews, portraying herself as the abandoned bride, while her father moved to sever business ties with Whitmore Enterprises. Financial analysts predicted Arthur's empire might crumble without the Prescott connections, but Arthur was focused elsewhere. 3 days after the canceled wedding, he called Olivia. "I'd like to establish a formal visitation schedule," he said. "Weekends, holidays, whatever works for Ethan and you." Olivia sounded cautious. "Are you sure? This is a significant commitment, Arthur. I've missed 12 years. I don't want to miss another day." They arranged for Arthur to take Ethan every other weekend and Wednesday evenings for dinner. The first weekend was awkward. Arthur's penthouse wasn't designed with children in mind, and he realized he knew little about parenting. But Ethan's enthusiasm for their architectural tours of the city bridged the gaps. "So, you seem different," Marcus observed over lunch one day, a month after the canceled wedding. "Happier despite everything." Arthur nodded toward the window where construction continued on his latest development. "I'm redesigning the project, going back to my original vision before the investors pushed for more luxury units. And adding a community center wasn't in the plans before," Marcus noted, studying the blueprints. "Victoria would hate it." "Victoria never understood what architecture meant to me," Arthur replied. "It wasn't about profit margins. It was about creating spaces that improved people's lives." As summer arrived, Arthur's routine centered around Ethan's football games and school events. He rearranged business meetings to attend Ethan's graduation from primary school, sitting awkwardly beside Olivia in the school auditorium. "You didn't have to come," she whispered as they applauded. "I wouldn't miss it," he replied simply. Afterward, at a small celebration in Olivia's apartment, Arthur found himself examining the framed photographs on her bookshelves. Ethan's entire childhood captured in moments he'd missed. Birthdays, Halloween costumes, his first day of school. "He wanted a football party every year until he was 10, Olivia explained, noticing Arthur's attention. Then suddenly it had to be architecture-themed. "I wish I'd been there," Arthur said quietly. "You're here now," Olivia replied. "That's what matters to him." In July, during a company restructuring, Arthur made a decision that shocked his board of directors. He stepped back from daily operations to focus on design again, promoting Marcus to CEO while remaining chairman. "The board thinks you're having a midlife crisis," Marcus joked after the announcement. "Maybe I am," Arthur admitted. "Or maybe I'm finally getting my priorities straight." The change allowed Arthur more flexibility with Ethan. By August, they had established comfortable routines, including Saturday morning football practice and Sunday visits to construction sites. Arthur found himself rediscovering his passion for design through his son's eyes. For Ethan's 13th birthday in September, Arthur struggled with what gift would be meaningful. "He has everything," Arthur complained to Marcus. "Video games, sports equipment, books. Olivia's done an amazing job providing for him." "What did you want at his age?" Marcus asked. The answer came to Arthur immediately. That evening, he thumbed through storage boxes until he found a portfolio he hadn't opened in years. Inside were his original architectural drawings, sketches and designs from before spreadsheets, and profit margins had taken over his life. On Ethan's birthday, after cake at Olivia's apartment, Arthur handed his son a carefully wrapped package. "These were my first designs," he explained, as Ethan opened the portfolio. "Before I started Whitmore Enterprises." Ethan flipped through the sketches with reverence. "You drew all these? When I was just a few years older than you?" Arthur nodded. "I thought maybe we could use some of these ideas for projects together." Ethan looked up, his eyes bright. "Really? Like actual buildings?" "Maybe start with a treehouse," Olivia suggested, smiling. "The apartment super might object to full-scale construction." Arthur met her eyes across the table, and something passed between them, an acknowledgement of how far they'd come in just a few months. Later, as Arthur prepared to leave, Ethan hugged him fiercely. "Best birthday ever, Dad." Walking to his car, Arthur realized he felt the same contentment he'd been chasing for years. Not from business success or social status, but from the simple word, Dad. What new challenges and joys do you foresee for Arthur, Olivia, and Ethan as they navigate this evolving family dynamic? What's the most profound second chance you've ever witnessed, where people rebuilt something stronger after it was broken? Share your stories below. October brought cooler weather and new developments. Victoria's father, still bitter about the canceled wedding, orchestrated a financial attack on Whitmore Enterprises, attempting a hostile takeover. "We can fight this," Marcus assured Arthur during an emergency meeting. "At what cost?" Arthur asked, studying the projections. "More 70-hour weeks? Missing Ethan's football games? What's the alternative?" Arthur looked out his office window at the London skyline, several buildings he'd designed visible in the distance. "We downsize, go back to our roots, quality projects, reasonable profits, work-life balance." The decision meant selling off several properties and laying off staff in certain divisions. The business press called it Whitmore's fall. But Arthur felt no regret. "You're dealing with this well," Olivia commented when he explained the situation during Ethan's Wednesday dinner. "The Arthur I knew would have fought to the bitter end. The Arthur you knew needed to prove something," he replied. "I don't anymore." As October ended, Ethan asked if he could spend Christmas with both parents. "Not like together," he clarified hastily. "But maybe Dad could come for dinner." Arthur looked to Olivia, leaving the decision to her. "If you'd like to join us, you're welcome," she said carefully. "Rachel and her family will be there too." "I'd like that," Arthur replied. Equally careful, the holiday proved less awkward than expected. Rachel remained cool toward Arthur, but her husband and children welcomed him warmly. After dinner, Arthur helped with dishes, something his former self would have considered beneath him. "You've changed," Olivia observed, drying a plate beside him. "For the better, I hope." "Definitely for the better," she confirmed with a small smile. As autumn deepened into winter, Arthur found himself spending more time at Olivia's apartment. What began as dropping Ethan off after outings evolved into staying for dinner, then helping with homework, then lingering for films or board games. The three of them fell into a comfortable routine that felt surprisingly natural. In early December, Ethan's school held a career day. He asked both parents to attend. "He wants you to talk about architecture," Olivia explained, "and me about literature." Standing before a classroom of 7th graders, Arthur felt more nervous than he had during multi-million-pound negotiations. But seeing Ethan's proud face in the front row steadied him. "Architecture isn't just about buildings," Arthur told the class. "It's about creating spaces where life happens, where families grow, where communities gather, where memories are made." Afterward, walking to the car park, Olivia said quietly, "That's not how you would have described it 12 years ago." 12 years ago, I was building monuments to myself," Arthur admitted. "Now I understand what really matters." A week before Christmas, Arthur helped Olivia move into a new apartment. Nothing extravagant, but in a better neighborhood with an extra bedroom and closer to Ethan's school. He had helped her find it, but insisted she purchase it independently. "This place suits you," he said, as they unpacked boxes in the living room, while Ethan organized his new bedroom. "It feels like a fresh start," Olivia agreed, arranging books on a shelf. Neither said what they were both thinking. That somehow, 12 years and countless mistakes later, they had found their way to a new beginning. "What's this?" Arthur lifted a dusty shoebox from the back of Olivia's wardrobe. They had been unpacking for hours, and Ethan had fallen asleep on his new bedroom floor, surrounded by half-arranged sports trophies. Olivia glanced over and froze. "I forgot about that." Arthur set the box on the bed and removed the lid. Inside were dozens of envelopes, all addressed to Olivia, in his handwriting, many with "Return to Sender" stamped across them. Some were still sealed. "You kept these?" His voice was barely audible. Olivia sat beside him on the bed. "I didn't keep them. My mother did." "Your mother?" "She gave me this box after her diagnosis last year. Said she had something to confess." Olivia touched one of the envelopes gently. "She intercepted your letters after we separated. I never knew you'd written." Arthur stared at the stack of correspondence, physical evidence of attempts to communicate that had never reached their intended recipient. "There must be 20 letters here." 27, Olivia corrected softly. "I counted when she gave them to me." "Did you read them?" "Some." She looked away. It was too painful after so much time had passed. With trembling fingers, Arthur picked up an envelope postmarked 12 years earlier, just weeks after their separation. He'd written it from a hotel room in Manchester during his first major development deal. "May I?" he asked, indicating the letter. Olivia nodded, her eyes fixed on his face. Arthur unfolded the paper, recognizing his younger self in the hurried handwriting. "Liv," he read aloud. "I know you need space, but please call me. The promotion isn't worth losing you. I've been blind, prioritizing work over us. This hotel room is empty without your books scattered everywhere and your terrible singing in the shower." His voice caught. He remembered writing those words, the desperate loneliness of those first weeks without her. "Your mother really kept these from you. She thought she was protecting me." Olivia's voice was tight with emotion. "She never approved of your ambition, said it would always come before family. She wasn't entirely wrong." Arthur set the letter down. "I convinced myself you'd moved on when you didn't respond. That gave me permission to bury myself in work. I thought you'd chosen your career over me," Olivia said. "When you didn't call or come home, it confirmed what I'd feared all along." Arthur picked up another envelope. "This one's from your birthday that year." "Don't." Olivia placed her hand over his. "I can't relive all of it tonight." They sat in silence, the weight of what might have been hanging between them. Outside, snow had begun to fall, dusting the windows of Olivia's new beginning with white. "We should have fought harder," Arthur finally said. "Both of us." "Maybe." Olivia carefully returned the letters to their box. "Or maybe we needed these years apart to become who we are now." Arthur considered this. "Do you like who I am now?" he asked. The question was simpler and more vulnerable than any he'd asked in years. "Yes," Olivia answered without hesitation. "You're the man I always hoped you'd become." Something shifted between them, a closed door cracking open after years of being sealed shut. Arthur leaned forward slightly, uncertain. The moment was interrupted by Ethan calling from his room. "Mom, did you find my Arsenal poster?" The spell broken. They both stood. "I should go," Arthur said. "It's getting late, and you still have a lot of unpacking." "Thank you for your help today." Olivia walked him to the door. "With everything." In the hallway, Arthur turned back. "Those letters. Would it be okay if I read them sometime? The ones you never saw?" "They were written to me," Olivia said gently. But yes, someday. This is a truly emotional and revelatory moment. How do you think reading those letters will further transform Arthur's perspective and his relationship with Olivia? What's the most impactful old letter or diary entry you've ever discovered? And what truth did it reveal? Share your insights below. Arthur drove home through the snowy streets, his mind replaying the evening's discovery. For 12 years, he'd believed Olivia had cut him off completely. Learning the truth, that his attempts to reconcile had been intercepted, changed everything. The next morning, he canceled his meetings and returned to Olivia's apartment. She answered the door in joggers and a University of Cambridge sweatshirt, clearly surprised to see him. "Arthur, is everything all right?" "I couldn't sleep," he admitted. "I kept thinking about those letters." Olivia hesitated, then stepped aside to let him in. The apartment was still in disarray, boxes everywhere. "Ethan's at school. I took the day off to unpack. I'd like to help." Arthur removed his coat. "And talk, if that's okay." They worked side by side, arranging furniture and unpacking dishes, their conversation flowing more easily than it had in years. Arthur shared stories about his early business struggles, while Olivia described raising Ethan alone, the challenges and joys he'd missed. "He asked about you constantly," she said, as they assembled a bookshelf in the living room. "I told him what I could, but it never seemed enough. I wish I'd known." Arthur handed her a screwdriver. "About him, about everything. Would it have made a difference?" The question wasn't accusatory, just honest. "I'd like to think so." Arthur considered his answer carefully. "The man I was then, I don't know, but I hope some part of me would have risen to the occasion." By evening, they'd made significant progress on the apartment. Arthur ordered dinner, and they ate at Olivia's kitchen table, the conversation turning to Ethan's upcoming school break. "I thought I might take him skiing," Arthur suggested, "if that works for you." "He'd love that," Olivia smiled. "He's never been. Would you want to come?" The invitation slipped out before Arthur could consider its implications. Olivia looked surprised. "As in, the three of us?" "It might be good for him. For us, as a family." Arthur corrected himself quickly. "Co-parents, I mean." "Co-parents," Olivia repeated, a flicker of something unreadable crossing her face. "I'll think about it." After dinner, as Arthur prepared to leave, Olivia retrieved the shoebox of letters. "I think you should take these. Read them when you're ready." "Are you sure?" "They're part of our history," she said simply. "Maybe understanding the past will help us navigate the future." That night, in his much emptier penthouse, Arthur read each letter. Some were angry, written in the early days of their separation. Others were regretful, pleading for another chance. The final ones were resigned, accepting what he had believed was her decision to move on. With each page, Arthur felt the weight of lost time more acutely. What might have happened if just one of these letters had reached Olivia? Would they have reconciled? Would he have known his son from birth? The last letter, dated nearly a year after their separation, was the most difficult to read. "Liv, this will be my final attempt to reach you. I've accepted that you've moved on, and I need to do the same. Despite everything, I want you to know that loving you was the best part of my life. Whatever success I achieve will always feel hollow without you to share it. I hope someday you find the happiness you deserve, even if it couldn't be with me. Always, Arthur." Tears blurred his vision as he folded the letter. He'd written those words believing he'd never have another chance. Now, impossibly, that chance existed. On Christmas Eve, Arthur arrived at Olivia's apartment for their agreed-upon gift exchange. Ethan greeted him excitedly, dragging him to see the small tree they'd decorated in the living room. "We saved a bunch of baubles for you to hang." Ethan handed him a box containing glass ornaments painted with architectural landmarks. Mum says you gave her these." Arthur glanced at Olivia, who was arranging mince pies on a plate in the kitchen. Our first Christmas together, one for each month we'd known each other. The evening was comfortable, exchanging gifts, watching holiday films, planning their upcoming ski trip. When Ethan finally went to bed, leaving Arthur and Olivia alone in the living room, a gentle silence fell between them. "I read all the letters," Arthur said finally. "And I understand now why you thought I'd abandoned you, why you didn't tell me about Ethan." Arthur moved closer on the sofa. "I'm so sorry, Liv. We both made mistakes," Olivia acknowledged. "What matters is where we go from here." "Where do you want to go?" Arthur asked, his heart pounding in a way it hadn't since he was a young architect, with dreams bigger than his bank account. Olivia looked at their Christmas tree, its lights twinkling in the darkened room. "I want what's best for Ethan, and for you," James pressed gently. "I want to—" She hesitated. "I want to stop being afraid of getting hurt again." Arthur took her hand, a gesture so familiar yet new. "I can't promise I won't make mistakes, but I can promise I won't make the same ones." Outside, snow began falling again, coating the city in quiet white. Inside, two people who had once vowed forever, then lost their way, found themselves at another beginning. "Maybe," Olivia said softly, her fingers tentatively intertwining with his. "We could find out together." Later that night, after Arthur had gone home, Olivia found a small package he'd slipped under the tree without her noticing. Inside was an antique compass with a note. "So we never lose our way again." She held it to her heart, allowing herself to imagine a future she'd long since stopped believing possible. This is a truly heartwarming and significant step for Arthur and Olivia. What do you think their second chance wedding will be like, reflecting their growth and changed priorities? What's the most inspiring example of a relationship being rebuilt after significant challenges? Share your story below. "Did you remember the checkered napkins?" Arthur asked, adjusting his tie in the cottage mirror. The ocean breeze swept through the open windows, carrying the scent of salt and wildflowers. "Dad, you've asked about the napkins 3 times. Ethan rolled his eyes, looking grown up in his suit, despite being only 14. "Mom handled everything. It's perfect." "Sorry." Arthur exhaled slowly. "Just nervous." "You've been married before," Ethan pointed out. "To each other. That's what makes it important to get right this time." Arthur turned to his son, his best man, and placed his hands on the boy's shoulders. "How do I look?" "Like yourself," Ethan answered honestly. "That's what Mum fell back in love with." The small beachfront property in Cornwall had been Olivia's choice, a deliberate contrast to the extravagance Arthur had planned for his cancelled wedding to Victoria. No reporters, no society photographers, just 30 close friends and family gathered on the sand. Outside, chairs had been arranged in a semicircle facing the ocean. White lilies and blue hydrangeas decorated the simple arch where Arthur now stood, watching the small gathering of guests find their seats. Marcus gave him a thumbs up from the front row. The past year had transformed everything. After that Christmas Eve, when possibilities reopened, Arthur and Olivia had moved cautiously forward. The ski trip in February became their first real time together as a family. By spring, weekend dinners had become a tradition. In summer, Arthur had bought the small cottage where they now stood, as a place for the 3 of them to escape the city. In September, on the anniversary of their first wedding 25 years earlier, Arthur had proposed again, not with an extravagant gesture or expensive ring, but with a simple question asked, while they walked along this very beach. "You ready?" Marcus approached, clapping Arthur on the shoulder. "More ready than I've ever been for anything," Arthur replied with certainty. String music began, and the small gathering turned expectantly toward the cottage. Rachel emerged first, smiling genuinely at Arthur for the first time in years. Then Olivia appeared, wearing a simple white dress that moved with the ocean breeze. No veil, no train. Just Olivia, her hair loose around her shoulders, carrying a small bouquet of wildflowers. Arthur felt his breath catch. This was nothing like their first wedding, with its elaborate ceremony and hundreds of guests. That had been about appearances. This was about truth. As Olivia reached him under the arch, Arthur took her hands in his. "You're beautiful," he whispered. "So are you," she replied, her eyes bright with emotion. The officiant, an old friend from their college days, began the ceremony. "We're gathered here today to witness something rare. Not just a marriage, but a redemption. Arthur and Olivia have traveled a long, complicated road to stand before us today. They've learned that love isn't just about the joy of beginning, but the courage to begin again." Ethan stood proudly beside his father, holding the rings they had chosen together, simple bands engraved with their family initials. When it came time for vows, Arthur spoke from the heart. "Olivia, we lost 12 years, but I refuse to regret them anymore. Every mistake led us here, more complete than we were before. I promise to prioritize what truly matters. You, Ethan, the family we've finally become. I won't take a single day for granted." Tears filled Olivia's eyes as she responded. "Arthur, when we met, we were dreamers, with nothing but potential. We lost our way once, but the compass always pointed back to you. I promise to remember that love isn't about perfection. It's about growing together, forgiving and choosing each other every day." As they exchanged rings, Ethan beamed. No longer the confused boy who had arrived at a wedding to meet his father, but a young man secure in his parents' love for him and each other. "By the power vested in me," the officiant concluded, "I now pronounce you husband and wife again." Their kiss was met with cheers from the small gathering. As they turned to face their guests, Arthur felt a completeness he'd chased his entire adult life, but never found in wealth or status. The reception was held on the beach as the sun began to set. Tables had been arranged on the sand, decorated with candles, and the checkered napkins Arthur had worried about. A small band played quietly as everyone enjoyed the informal dinner. During the toasts, Ethan stood nervously, adjusting his tie, just like his father. "When I was little," he began, "I used to make up stories about my dad. In my head, he was this superhero who would someday return." He looked at Arthur. "The real dad I found wasn't a myth. He was better. He was human. And watching my parents find their way back to each other taught me what real love looks like. Not perfect, just worth fighting for." Later, as Arthur and Olivia shared their first dance on the sand, he held her close. "No regrets?" he asked softly. "Just one," she replied. "That compass you gave me last Christmas. I forgot to pack it for our honeymoon." Arthur smiled against her hair. "We don't need it anymore. We know exactly where we're going." As night fell, lanterns were lit along the beach. Ethan joined his parents for a dance, the three of them laughing as they stumbled over each other's feet. From a distance, they looked like what they had finally become. Not the perfect family from a glossy magazine, but a real one, tested by time, and stronger for having been broken. When the last guest had left, and Ethan had fallen asleep in the cottage, Arthur and Olivia walked along the moonlit shore. "What would you have done," Olivia asked, "if I hadn't shown up at that wedding with Ethan?" James considered the question seriously. "Married Victoria, been successful, probably miserable. And if your invitation hadn't accidentally found its way to us?" "There was nothing accidental about it," Arthur admitted. "I wanted you to see what you'd missed out on. Instead, I discovered what I'd been missing." They stopped walking, facing the endless horizon where moonlight silvered the waves. "We've come full circle," Olivia observed, "but we're not the same people who started." "That's what makes it work this time," Arthur said, drawing her close. "We had to become different people to find our way back to each other." Behind them, their footprints in the sand marked the path they'd walked. Ahead, the untouched beach stretched into possibility. Between past and future, they stood together in the perfect present. A family reclaimed, a love rebuilt, stronger at the broken places. Friends, have you been moved by Arthur and Olivia's incredible journey? Their story teaches us that true love is about resilience, forgiveness, and the courage to redefine what family means. If their path resonated with you, give this video a like. Share it with someone who needs to hear about second chances, and subscribe to our channel for more heartwarming tales of redemption and enduring love. Tell us in the comments, what does a second chance at love truly mean to you? We'd love to hear your thoughts.